I am Matt Vasquez from Team Whiplash, and this is the RoboCast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Samuel864, and welcome back to the RoboCast with myself, Steve the AmericanKilljoy, and David of because Jevon's on a boat.
Yes.
You needed another Norfolk reference, and I was just here.
We've got. How are you doing, David? It's been a long old while since we've had you on the podcast, and how have you found the season? Yeah,
it's been interesting. I mean, I came into it thinking, shelf, ooters, and the usual concerns that I think everybody else had coming into this season. But there's been some pretty terrific fights. I mean, the Rotator Kraken springs to mind straight away, and there's a couple of juicy ones here as well, along with some extra stuff.
We'll get to that, and obviously. Of course, it wouldn't be a season of BattleBots on Discovery if we didn't have Matt Vasquez from Whiplash join us.
Honestly,
how are you doing, man? It's been a hot minute.
It's been a while. Where I'm doing good. It's life's it's going. Been busy, but getting back into robot mode a little bit. So that's been fun.
I was going to say because not too far away now, you're actually doing a certain live stream event, aren't you?
I am. I will be. I'm going to Norwalk, so that'll be an experience. I've been wanting to go for a long time, but I was in school, and BattleBots alone is like insane that I did that in the first place. So like adding Norwalk on top of that would have just been impossible.
But a bit more free time now, and it's time to go and dominate the rest of the divisions.
Go teach them a few things.
Yeah, it should be fun. I'm excited. I've been wanting to go the last 2 years, like Tommy Wong and Calvin. The year Droopy won, the whole entire thing. Mm-hmm. I was kind of planning to go with them, but it just didn't really work out. So now 2 years later, it's like I'm finally going. So it'll be fun.
Been a long time coming, and you finally get to live the dream of being on live stream. It's not even BattleBots anymore.
Absolutely not. Well, we are here to talk about BattleBots, the round of 16, and I do want to talk a little bit about Whiplash itself first, because I'm a bit confused, and I think a lot of people are confused. Where has the spinner been? Because as much as I'm appreciating the fact that you're turning up to this, spinner fest with a lifter and just beating everyone, I'm a bit confused as to, especially the Scorpius fight was the one that kind of was like, why didn't you just use the spinner? But I'm sure there's a reason why. Tell us all about it.
So, first off, we ran the spinner for 3 seasons, and we were pretty successful every season. The robot worked well, but we looked at or at least I looked at all the fights we lost. The rest of the team didn't necessarily agree with my my decision making here, but all the fights we lost, the spinner did not help us at all. Like every single one, and most of them were against. The only one you could debatably argue it helped was SawBlaze, but all the vertical spinners we fought, the spinner was a non-factor. Like it didn't help us at all. And it really just came down to they would hit us a couple times and we just couldn't take the hits because we're kind of, how Whiplash is built, we're really skirting on the edge of barely being able to hold on because we have, 2 full weapon systems. Our frame is all 1/4-inch aluminum, which is beetle weight. Frame material.
Oh dear.
So it's if we want to survive big spinners, we had to put more weight in armor and more weight in forks and things like that. That wouldn't just get obliterated when we get hit. So the way to do that was get rid of the spinner. And the idea was that if we fight endgame again, the spinner was a non-factor in that fight. We take all that and put it into what could be more effective against them. So that was the thought. And for example, even the Scorpios fight, you watch our SawBlaze match, obviously we didn't have enough top armor.
No, definitely not.
It was pretty clear we didn't have enough top armor, and we didn't really have enough weight to have a good, ground game attachment. So if we fight going against Scorpios, we figured, okay, let's take the exact opposite approach. Let's armor the crap out of the top of the robot and put, all the ground game we can. And it worked so much better than against SawBlaze. So there's something to it. Spinners aren't, gonna a guaranteed win when you have one on your robot. That's for sure. Yeah.
You got to know how to put it and where to put it in the right places. It's not just turn it up and go. So there's an art to it.
Yeah, and another big part of Whiplash is that like the spinner lifter combination, the lifter is like the lifting spatula is in front of the spinner. If we can't lift you, we can't hit you with the spinner. I mean, it's kind of as simple as that. So if we aren't able to get under you, the spinner is useless anyway. So we figured take the weight from the spinner and make it easier for us to actually utilize the lifter. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other thing as well is not everyone kind of realizes that, but the lifter is your weapon that's kind of judged on when it goes to a judge's decision. Not the spinner. Obviously, it helps with damage, of course, but like the aggressive weapon usage comes from the lifter, not the spinner.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny. Some people have made the joke like, "Oh, it's just like a decorative spinner." It's really been like a.
You stick your hand in front of it and see how decorative it is.
Yeah. No, you don't want to. You don't want to do that.
Spinner, it's fine.
I mean, I saw the fight with hypothermia a few days ago. I saw that spinner do something. It took a wheel off. I saw it happen.
It took a wheel off hypothermia. And the one fight I will say the spinner was the main factor that won us the fight was Hydra. That fight, like if we were to fight Hydra this last season, we had the spinner. We had the arm with the spinner ready to go for whenever we needed it. And it was for when we fight a non-spinner type robot. So if we were to fight Blip or Hydra or any of the hammer robots or any of the lifter robots, we would have run the spinner. It's just we fought all spinners.
Of course.
So it didn't really work out.
No,
but it was there. We took the spinner through safety, and it didn't get to use it.
It's one of those things. We'll obviously get to your fight a little bit later on because there is a lot to get through. We'll we will get there eventually, of course. But this is, of course,
somewhat prepared.
Yes, of course. This is the round of 16, as usual with the kind of big tournament episodes. Click off now. Do not continue.
Yes.
Now I've given you enough time.
Won't hurt our feelings.
Literally, go and watch it and come back. It's fine. We won't be offended. But we will start off with the first fight of the episode, which was Riptide and Uppercut. I'm somewhat surprised that Riptide was able to be so dominant against Uppercut because, like, in my head, Uppercut has the ability to kill anything in one hit. Like, we've seen it before. And I felt like at some point Uppercut would have connected with Riptide, but Ethan just didn't give him a chance. He just drove the wheels off of Riptide and... then the wheels fell off Uppercut, and all that foam started getting sprayed everywhere. It was amazing.
The weird contraband inside,
It was definitely contraband. Oh dear me! It was a spectacular driving fight from Ethan, and credit to that team. There's been a lot of things said about dubious origins of Riptide, but they've still got to pilot it, and they did a great job.
And they've taken things out of it that like they've taken weaknesses out of the system. That was something that Pete was going over in the fight. The fight lead up, and I mean that's the trick, is trying to make little changes to make sure that it's even more reliable than when you probably first started the tournament with. These robots change a lot over the course of a tournament, so you're not necessarily entering the box with the same robot you showed up to the event with. So they're learning, they're making progress. I didn't expect them to dominate Uppercut as well as they did. Uppercut just on that first hit, and you'll see in the Witch Doctor Copperhead fight coming up where like it's talked about where like if that first hit happens and you're on the wrong side of that first hit, you could be behind for the rest of the match if the other team stays on top of you, and that's just the nature of the sport. So it just happened to be Riptide this time that got on top of Uppercut, and it was over really before it started.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think a big part of it was like just the geometry of the weapons, that when they went head to head, like
that wide service area again. Yeah.
And like how Uppercut has those kind of like two like spring-loaded little wedgelets in front of their weapon. Those really hindered them, I think, in a lot of ways. Or having anything in front of the weapon, because Riptide, if you have forks against Riptide, he is going to hit them. So like for example, when my brother fought Riptide, Jason's forks are just giant chunks of AR, and Riptide couldn't hurt them. Like he would hit them and bounce off. But having the little tiny forks like on Uppercut, those aren't meant to take a hit. They're meant to scoop under other wedges. So, Riptide was just able to grab those and, throw them off balance immediately.
I do think as well, I know it's not like the right setup for a vertical spinner in this day and age, the very, the forks and what have you with with Uppercut, but I do wonder if they would have benefited from having a little bit more stability, because the front of the robot's very narrow, especially without the wedge you can see on screen here. It obviously has the tiny little forks, and the kind of the weapon assembly bit in the middle is just the width of the front of the robot. And I get if they connect, there is a great chance they're going to win, but they didn't get a chance to connect in this instance because they didn't have the ability to kind of point it where they wanted to. And it's kind of, when you see Uppercut turn, it does gyro a lot, and it kind of does. Yep. It's not very balanced in my mind.
It's the nature of a two-wheel bot. It's they oversteer and they gyro, especially if you got to avert it. That's just the unfortunate reality
physics
of driving a two-wheel.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially with a weapon that big, makes driving it really difficult.
Exactly.
Like if he's not, like a lot of the fights Uppercut wins, he just kind of like sits, aims, and then drives forward into you. He can't really like maneuver around the arena all that well. So yeah, that got him into trouble this time.
Definitely. Yep. David, anything to add?
I just wish we'd seen like the lifting arms on Riptide still. We've not seen them.
We've still
yet
not seen them. It's been so long.
Look, they're cheering in this fight like it's best Tantrum impression, and it's just not happening. You know, I feel that's the greatest letdown of Riptide. But it does hit hard.
They took a weak point out and taking them lifters away. That's unfortunate, but it's becoming more streamlined, I guess. But less entertaining. I was looking forward to another like Yeti-ish, like kind of robot where just there's that whole different dynamic of having lifting forks. It brings out something new to the table rather than just smash face into the robot. So
yeah, definitely. Well done to Riptide though. First time into BattleBots and into the top 8. It's an incredible achievement, especially now. Like when there's been 6 years of prior building, and very, very impressive to kind of come in and do as well as they have done. Fight number 2, I think, could be fight of the season.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Unbelievable. Now, I'm going to bring up something I talked about last week, which was the me saying to Ginger and Alex that I thought Rotator would win this. I actually didn't. As it turns out, I went back and checked
to cover himself.
No. David and Steve will clarify this for me, because we have our prediction pool, and I actually did say Tantrum would beat Rotator. So
you're safe.
For a hot minute, though, I will say, for a hot minute in that fight, when Tantrum's stuck in that corner, I'm like, do you know what? I regret everything. I wish I had gone for Rotator.
I was going to say, you do like the opposite thing where like, secretly you're like, oh, I think Tantrum's going to win, and we had them on the podcast last week, and you say to their face like, nah, Rotator, sorry guys.
I got it all wrong. I actually did choose Tantrum.
Backwards.
Yeah,
this is the latest apology to Tantrum, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's running theme with the podcast.
I will happily take my L, because I just flip-flopped with that fight so much, and I'm glad I did, because it was so good. Like, Tantrum,
a lot to unpack here.
Oh my god, Tantrum at the start, like bullying Rotator around the box, and breaking that kind of front diamond shaped armor off at the front, and like it was like peeled away, and bits were hanging out and everything.
And then Rotator came back and was all of a sudden completely on top, which was I think the most impressive thing about Tantrum so far. Like I'd say a good example is their Lucky fight, their Gigabyte fight, and this Rotator fight, is they were on their heels, like looking like they were going to lose all 3 of those fights, and then came back.
They won ugly.
Really
they won
impressive.
ugly 3 times. Yeah, it's been really, really impressive.
Yeah.
The stat card doesn't show whether or not your win was beautiful or ugly. It's still a win at the end of the day.
A win like that is more impressive in my opinion, because losing, like when you're in a losing position in a fight and then you manage to bring it back and win is not something that happens all that often. It really isn't. Yeah. Most of the time it's really one-sided. So that's impressive. They did that, that many times.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Especially
there's
this
a point where
well.
Tantrum. Yeah, there's a point where Tantrum just at one point looks like they're going in circles, and
I wonder
goes
whether
over
the
and plays with his food.
Whether like they had to re-engage again. Like that's something I'd love to know.
Yeah, it's happened a few times this year where teams have been told to kind of re-engage with a robot that's almost dead. But Tantrum obviously wasn't. It was kind of stuck on a piece of debris, wasn't it? I think there was a bit of chain in there. I couldn't see exactly what it was.
I think it was a bit
on.
that broke off of Rotator already. Like it was just
possibly,
there.
yeah. But I have to say that the Hail Mary at the end, because I still think, had it gone to the judges, Rotator would have won the fight. I think it had done enough.
It's close. It is really close.
Like you don't want to leave it in the balance. And
it would have been split for sure.
Well,
yes,
there's definitely
we'll cover that.
a question to. Well, there's a question to be asked, right? But like, the fact that Tantrum kind of drove them at the wall, and then their arm is now not able to move as freely as it once was. There was a little bit of play, but not much, I think. And then spins it up, and over she goes, and out of the arena.
Not directing it over the side, it just happens. You can't control these birds. They just do things.
You know what it reminded me of? Storm 2 and Series 7, when it was Steel Avenger. Like just
Steel Avenger,
off the arena and just it's out.
Definitely. It was just it was heartbreaking for Victor, because you just see him like kind of like, for God's sake,
again.
Almost again. Not quite.
There is a championship in Rotator. I'm even with the shelf and the kind of the short corners now. I still think there's a championship in there. It's just every year he gets someone who's very good.
It's the draw.
Yeah, I think Rotator is the best horizontal spinner in my opinion. Like the most well-rounded. I mean, Bloodsport would be like a close second in my opinion, but they deal a lot of damage. They could take huge hits. They actually are capable of controlling their opponent when they want to. So that's not a lot of people can say that. So that's pretty impressive.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And of course, if you remember last year, they lost to the eventual champion. So,
so we'll see if it happens again
against him.
Yeah.
So
it's a good omen for Tantrum. You never know. But this was just wonderful. I hope in a few years' time, people look at this fight like with a lot of joy, because like I genuinely think this is the best fight of the season, maybe one of the best fights BattleBots has had since it came back. It's that good.
Yeah. Thematically, it's a tour de force.
Like it was up and down the whole fight. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Which is what you want. That's like that's all anyone wants. Is a good back and forth, and not knowing who's going to win before the when the fight's about to end. Like it was literally the fight was 20 seconds away from finishing, and you still didn't know what was going to happen. And credit to both teams. It was just a spectacle.
I just love how that duckbill just keeps getting under things.
It's really good.
Don't expect it to, and then just it's under again.
Definitely.
I fully expected Victor to do what he did in past fights, where he uses his forks and he drives people across the box, and then he whips that weapon around.
He did at the start. He tried using the forks at the start, didn't he? But then kind of gave up on that quite quickly, I think. Which I don't know whether that cost him or not. I don't think it did, but it was either way. I mean, you can't really knock it. I
mean, time passes differently at the box side. Unfortunately,
of course, I imagine it's all a blur.
Totally different feeling.
Definitely.
Oh well. There's always next year.
There is always next year, and of course, bounties, right?
Definitely bounties.
I'll say, they are a bounty. To be fair, if rumors to be believed, and the teams from last year are the bounty bosses, I wouldn't like to fight it because, as you said, Matt, like I think they can kind of do all things. They can hit you really hard, and they can control bot you if they want to. So, fascinating to see. Fight number 3 was the other seems reasonable robot. There wasn't much fight to this fight. There was like a little bit of... Go on.
Yeah, this is the fight that we're surprised wasn't cut.
Yeah.
This is the one that we thought was going to get highlighted after seeing it. We're like kind of surprised with how quick it was. And it's an instance where if you have a heavyweight, you need to put that heavyweight in every conceivable way to see if it gets stuck and can't get its way down. This is a weird instance of forks doing the splits and then just sitting on your head and being like, well, here I am. I wonder how I got here.
You're probably wondering how I got here.
Yeah.
There you go. That's the one.
I am a bit disappointed that we didn't get to see the message on the underside of Jackpot last week. So obviously, for those that watched the episode, you saw "Oh heck" on the bottom this time. Last week it was "Yes please, I would like some more" for Ray and Tombstone, which was beautiful. But I want to know your thoughts on Blip. We've asked, lots of people what they think of Blip, and I want to know what you think, because I feel like this is very much in your wheelhouse.
Like, what's not to like about it? I mean, that's that's really all you can say. I mean, obviously the flipper mechanism is incredibly clever and impressive, and just how well it works, and like, not even how well it works, but how much better it can work in the future. Like, there's so much even more potential, which Aaron Hill will tell you. Like, if you talk to him about it, that's Blip can be, believe it or not, flip harder than it currently does. So, it's crazy. And even just besides the flipper mechanism, just the whole concept of the robot and like the strategy he takes, where I have to get all the way under you to flip you. And in doing that, the robot is incredibly well protected. And he has been able to get under everyone so far. I mean, there's still more of the tournament to come, so you don't know. But it's it's really impressive. I don't think a lot of people would have taken that risk to have your flipper on top of your robot. And
it is very strange.
Yeah,
it is very strange when you look at it for the first time and you think, well, you're so used to. Well, two of these guys that in the call right now are very used to your Brit style flipper, where you have this big spatula that sticks and scrapes the ground like you would most forks nowadays, and that's been the standard design for a rear hinge flipper for the longest time. But it makes sense as to why Aaron went this way with how strong everyone hits now. You don't want the part of your flipper that's going to contact the other robot to get buckled, and then all of a sudden now you can't use your flipper or it gets torn off. So it's a strange look. I do recall wondering, like, he is going to have to he's going to have to put himself in real danger against other bots to, hopefully not take too much damage, but still punch them up. Look at this, for
example, like a Jackpot took off a few of their wedgelets.
Mm-hmm.
If they had like the classic style of flipper, those hits would have been on the flipper.
Yeah.
And would have been damaged. I mean
we saw when Apollo and Eruption fought Carbide, for example, in Robot Wars, like the whole kind of flipper mechanism got kind of pulled to one side, and a lot of the times wouldn't sit back in its mounting. And at that point, what's the point? Because you're not going to get under anything and flip things. Whereas in this case,
and against a vertical spinner, it's even worse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And designing his robot like that gives him the confidence to drive as aggressively as he wants, because he knows he can get hit as many times as they will hit him, and his flipper will still be okay, unless there's some weird 1 in a million shot.
Definitely.
So, it did take a good lick in this fight, though. It did take one really good scrape, which, I mean, it's like one little dimple in right below like where the nose would be, I guess.
No, the Blip is now near mint condition. This is terrible.
It's not new in box anymore. It's such a shame.
No.
The value of Blip has gone right down.
The stonks of ruin.
The value went down when you took it off the lot. Come on.
It's true. It's true. Well, we've talked about one flipper. Let's talk about your best friend, Matt. The amount of trash talk I've seen from Jake Hewitt towards you guys has been joyful. I think he has a serious pent-up aggression to you.
No, he's just not over that fight.
he's salty. He's very salty.
He is very salty about it. I don't know. I mean, one thing I will say about Hydra, though, the fights he has lost so far this season, and debatably the fight against us, but more so the fights he lost this season, like the end game fight. Like, there was clearly something wrong with Hydra.
Mm-hmm.
Like, immediately smoke's coming from it. He had one flip to use for that whole entire fight.
Mm-hmm.
He was like on his heels the second he drove out of the square.
Mm-hmm.
And like the glitch fight, he had drive issues, of jammed up gearbox or something where he couldn't really drive.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the same can be said of this fight as well, because I think he said after the fight, like, one of my drive was gone straight away. Now, this fight was very interesting because Black Dragon, I feel like, threw this fight completely.
Absolutely. It was one of the, and I love the Brazilians, but this was one of the worst tactical fights I've ever seen.
From them especially, who like, because they're normally so good. They're normally so
they've got setups for literally everybody.
Yeah. I mean, it was frustrating to watch for me because Jake did everything right. Like, he's lost the drive motor. He could kind of move forward and he could move backward properly.
But he's got the center.
That's what I mean.
He's got the high ground.
He's got the high ground. He's fully Obi-Wan this and kind of sat there and pointed it, because what else does he need to do? Like, he's at the end of the day, it's then he's got the flip initially on Black Dragon. Yes. After that point, it's then up to Black Dragon to get those points back. And I get the kind of driving at them throughout the fight, and it was just futile because Jake is kind of like, I'm just going to turn and face you every single time, and Jake, absolutely nailed it. He really did. Just kind of, he got into their head and basically said, "Okay, you've got to come and get me now," and that's it. That was the fight.
I think had like Black Dragon had their heads cleared and really put their mind to it, they probably could have gotten behind him.
Definitely.
Or around him.
They had the mini-bot as well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What Jay call the Hydra syndrome, where like you get flipped once and you just panic the rest of the fight and just keep driving.
Yeah, you're like, I have to get points back. I have to somehow show the judges that I'm on top in this fight. Maybe they were trying to do what Glitch did in their fight and rip their flipper off. Like try to do damage. Like, I mean, even still, I think you still keep firing it with half the flipper on there. But
it's the issue with Black Dragon that it just doesn't quite have that weapon engagement compared to, let's say, Glitch, for example. Glitch has that giant weapon on it, whilst Black Dragon's is more kind of a nibbler that just wears down at you.
It can have the weapon engagement, it just has to get under you.
Yeah,
and they couldn't get under. Yeah,
no, they lost the ground
Hydra's
game.
got the ground
away.
game down.
Yeah. I mean, for those that have seen Jake's YouTube channel, I highly recommend go and have a look at the Team Watch YouTube channel. Like they show a video of him kind of trying to stab a knife underneath the forks, and he can't do it. You know, there's nothing getting under there.
It's breaking RA2 physics, is what it's doing.
Yeah, literally.
I think Hydra doesn't necessarily have the best ground game, and I say that because we did get under him when we fought him. So it's not the best, but I will say it is the most well-rounded ground game. Whereas his setup works as well against us as it did against Endgame. Whereas our setup worked fantastic against Hydra. We would get under him, but we could not get under Endgame. So Hydra has the one that works well against almost everybody. Yeah. Which is that's pretty good.
It is pretty good.
Yeah.
I do feel
his mobility though with the seams in the floor, it's very tricky.
It doesn't like
drive something.
Well, Jake doesn't seem to care though.
No.
As soon as he gets to the middle, I suppose he just kind of has to turn, and that's it really. I do
I've heard him say I'm gonna scrape these wedgelets, grind them as sharp as I can until I can't get out of my square. He's like, I don't care if I can't get out of my square. He's like, no one will get under me. So that's his mindset.
It's true. I do wonder how he's going to fare against Blip though, because Blip is very maneuverable, and I feel like Hydra is, but is limited by its forks, and I think that could cost them. But of course.
See.
Well, this will be the true test for Blip though, because Blip set up fantastic against spinners. Like most of the time, he will find a way to get underneath them. But then again, Hydra is the one who will sit there and face him. And
constantly.
Like I said, if he can't get out of his square, he just needs to turn.
That's the thing.
So it'll be the true test for Blip.
Absolutely, and I think I find it quite incredible that despite everything this season, they didn't get playing against each other in the regular season. They've somehow managed to find a way to fight each other in the tournament, which I do really enjoy. The fact that the two flippers end up against each other.
It means we've got a flipper in the semi-final for the first time since 2015, which is brilliant.
Yeah,
which is really cool. Really, really cool. Yeah, definitely. It is nice to know. Go on.
Being a lifter driver, it's in a lot of ways similar to being a flipper driver. It's you're not going to be dealing damage for the most part. So you have to accept that you have to be winning the whole time to win your fight. That's really what it comes down to. A robot like Hydra is going to have a really hard time winning split decisions because they're not dealing visible damage. And same with Blip and same with us. So it's a risk you take going to the judges with the flipper.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm intrigued to see how that one pans out because, obviously it is two very similar styles of robot, but a different way of going about it, a different way of getting to that end goal of having a flipper robot. So fascinating to see how it pans out.
Yeah.
Our next fight, Witch Doctor and Copperhead. Can we pour one out for the poor sacrificial snakes? Witch Doctor did a perfect backflip all the way over and just lands on the poor snakes.
Witch Doctor used body slam and it was super effective in seconds. It just died.
Oh, what a shame.
There's your animal cruelty of the episode.
Literally, there it is.
Yeah, we're off the air again.
YouTube's going to take it down. I did enjoy as well Cuddles having his hat as well, which is very nice to see. And again, as always, Kim Cohen's beautiful artwork on the drum for Copperhead. The snake coming out of the skull's eyes was just wonderful.
Yeah, that is something that their team has that no other team has.
I think them and Ribot, I think.
Occasionally I've seen her help. I know for a Black Dragon, she did their wedge for when they fought Ice Wave and maybe a couple others I don't know about. But
they did it against Hydra as well, didn't they? Black Dragon. They had
They
had the Hydra stick on the wedge slit.
Black Dragon logo.
Of course, sorry, I forgot about that one. That was great.
That's how you know who is friends with Team Copperhead.
There you go. Well, they fought last year, didn't they? So I suppose that makes sense. This fight was interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Because weapon to weapon, you kind of expect Copperhead to do better because it has, again, kind of like we spoke about earlier with the Uppercut and Riptide fight, that surface area at the front of Copperhead, the whole front is weapon. Whereas Witch Doctor is quite a narrow little piece. And I kind of expected Copperhead to get the advantage in that respect, but they just didn't. And Witch Doctor, Mike's driving in this was excellent. You know, they kind of had that initial hit where Witch Doctor gets turned over and they had to run away for a little bit and try and get some space, basically. And he did that very well. He worked his space quite well. And then as soon as he got that one little, you know, upper hand against Copperhead, did not let them off the hook and just kind of kept on them. It was really, really impressive again.
Well, I mean, I think Copperhead did have the design advantage going into this fight, where when they first went head to head, like Witch Doctor obviously took the worst of that and did a huge flip through the air. But I think this fight was really a battle of like design philosophies in a way, where Copperhead is a robot, where the chassis is all 1 inch thick AR. It is as rigid as a chassis can get. They've been using the same chassis for like 3 seasons now, and it is undamaged, which is incredible. Like no one uses the same chassis for 3 seasons. That just doesn't happen. But Copperhead is a robot who can do that just because of how overbuilt it is. And on the other hand, you have Witch Doctor, who is replacing frame sections every single fight because they're getting so twisted and beat up. But the trade-off there is a robot like Copperhead, when your frame is so rigid, all that shock goes to your internal components. Because the frame is not going to twist, it's not going to budge, it's not going to bend. And that's kind of what happened here. Whereas Witch Doctor, I'm sure they're going to have to replace pretty large sections of the robot after that fight. Because I'm sure that is not perfectly straight. But, the internals survive because there's some give in that system where the robot will twist and bend when it gets hit. So, yeah.
Yeah, it was impressive.
Just remarkable. And it's the talk of getting behind when you lose that first engagement, and Witch Doctor found a way to turn it around, and it was a really good showing. And they got a really tough next opponent, but we'll get to that. We have the 2 schools of thought. Where do you build an impenetrable, hardest material, toughest outside armor, or do you do something that's more compliant where you go like the shadow route, or a bot that can have parts that kind of give way as opposed to absorb all that shock and have it go through your whole design, where you can just have pieces that break off in a blade. And that's the strange balance that you have to go into when you're designing these things. And unfortunately, once the final hit on Copperhead happens, you can see that robot sitting upside down, and visibly nothing's wrong with it. But something on the inside clearly has just decided to just say, I'm done.
It's just jelly
you wouldn't
on
know.
the inside. Like, for all we know. It's
Yeah, literally. I think as well, an important thing to kind of note here is Witch Doctor are now in the quarterfinals, and I haven't really noticed them all season, which is like in the nicest possible way, because they're just going about their business very, very quietly, and that tends to spell trouble.
That
for
comes
a lot
from
of people.
only having 2 regular season fights too.
They had 3. They had 3.
No,
they had the Rusty fight, didn't they?
Well, okay,
right.
No, you're right. They had 2 fights. You're right.
Sorry, they had the Rusty exhibition. Rest in peace, Rusty.
Rest in peace, Rusty. It always is kind of worrying when, like, it's in sports when a team kind of does that, they just quietly go about their business and you don't really notice them. It tends to spell trouble. And like, Witch Doctor have been here before. They've obviously come second in the past. What do you reckon, Steve? Would you reckon championship run?
I think it's very possible. They still got to get through this quarterfinal. I think we maybe can start having the conversation after this quarterfinal, maybe. But I just really worry about this next matchup for them.
It's spelled doom.
That's what I mean. But there's history here, so
yeah, definitely.
We'll get to that.
I mean,
this has not gone well before.
If they'd won, they were guaranteed a rematch to someone they'd lost to anyway. So
that's true. No matter who won the fight, that's true.
Yeah, we'll get to that a bit later on, certainly.
Yeah.
But let's move on. Let's move on to P1 and SawBlaze, and poor P1. It really didn't. It did not have the.
It never got going.
I mean, they didn't really have anything to answer SawBlaze, did they? Because
it was the worst matchup for them, wasn't it?
This was If you could have chose anyone else in the bracket, and like this was like their worst nightmare, I think, because it's a low flat robot. They didn't have forks that could counter the length of SawBlaze's, and I get what they were going for with kind of just go for something completely different and say, well, you never know, right? I went for. I will give them credit though. I didn't see much damage on the top.
No,
and which considering what SawBlaze has been going through this season, we saw what it did to Minotaur in the first fight. Like that is very, very impressive.
There was the segment with Pete, wasn't there?
Yes.
Before the fight, just how thick they'd armored the top.
Yeah, Tickler said
it's
that
not
as
just
well.
a big old each piece of AR. It's a bunch of pieces all sandwiched together. It's not club sandwichy. I mean,
no, we're not Bloodsport here.
Yeah, we're not Bloodsport. But yeah, there's a true mad science going on with making sure that all this is tough enough but can give and deal with shock loads. There's clearly been a lot of R&D on stuff like this. I mean, well, it seems that way. This isn't just something you throw together on the day and just hope it works, because it came out looking pretty much as fresh as it went in. Aside probably from some scratches, it looked right, and it's kind of a shame, because I think P1 would have been a tougher matchup for Riptide. Actually, looking at it now with the way that it's shaped, I don't know. I think Riptide is relishing a shot at taking SawBlaze, but we'll see when that match happens. It's just,
well, I mean, JMO's dealt with Lynx before. I'm sure he'll be fine.
Yeah, it's just yeah. It's just a shame to see P1 die out at this point. I mean, it had quite a season. I mean, who expected it to make the round of 16 after its near miss last season? We were expecting a rebirth, of a retry from Brandon and his team, and it's just it was a drive in the right direction, but it just wasn't enough to just start in P1. You got to finish in P1. So
P1 got the Hypershock fight, so like, what more can you ask for?
Yeah.
I mean, that really was a beautiful moment, no matter how you slice it.
Which bizarrely Lego Wars predicted last year, but we'll gloss over that.
It's almost like we all saw it coming.
I know, weird.
Matt, as a lifter driver yourself, obviously, I know it's not 1-to-1, but how have you rated P1? Because obviously it's not 1-to-1, as I said, but the concept is largely similar. It's 4-wheel drive. Yeah. It's a pushing lifter. How have you rated P1 this year?
It's funny. Brandon from P1 came up to me at one point, like during the filming, and he's like, I love that. Like, you're not running the spinner and you're just a pure lifter this season. So it's we definitely have that connection. But it's one of those robots where kind of like he faces the same challenge that Blip does, where he takes the approach of, I'm going to make the front of my robot extremely tough, not going to worry about running into spinners. I can take the hits, but I run the risk of not being able to use my weapon if I can't get fully underneath them. So it's that he was taking that risk with this design. And this is one of those fights where it really showed that having to get fully underneath your opponent, against some opponents, it's going to cause trouble.
Yeah,
it's not going to make it easy for you. And SawBlaze is one of those opponents. I know from experience.
Yes, you do.
If your ground game is not the right ground game, you're going to be in big trouble. Like or you don't have a weapon that can knock him out in one hit. Like if you're a big spinner and you're fighting SawBlaze and you have somewhat decent top armor, even if he's owning you, you just need to get he needs to be winning 100% of the time to win, which is kind of like how Whiplash works, now P1 works, where a big vertical spinner only needs to be winning for 1% of the fight to win the match.
Definitely.
So it's definitely a challenge for robots like SawBlaze and P1, but in this case, SawBlaze just had better ground game. They didn't deal a whole lot of damage because P1's armor is insane.
Yeah, to be fair, JMO kind of stopped halfway through because I think he realised that in my mind, I think he realised I'm not actually doing very much, but I've already got the fight one, so why waste energy?
Preserve the weapon.
Yeah, correct. I do wonder how, because SawBlaze doesn't like a quarterfinal. He's gone out there the last couple of years. He lost to Tantrum. We all kind of got stunned when he lost to Tantrum. To eat humble pie again.
Bracket buster there,
literally. And then the season before, who did it fight the season before?
A Witch Doctor, wasn't it?
It was Witch Doctor. Yeah. Riptide. It's very similar to Mad Catter in terms of just general layout and shape, and I do wonder if that's going to kind of play into SawBlaze's favour because it has got that kind of fight data already, but the difference being is that very wide weapon, and I do wonder if that's going to
Rips had gyros and has an issue with that, then that's just going to give JMO the target and just wail on the back end, because
correct.
Yes.
I'm not sure how well armored that back is at the moment.
I just realized something, because Jameson had the experience of fighting the driver of Lynx with a 4-wheel drive vert, so that's a pretty good basis right there.
This is all of the connects here.
Yeah. So he's got some experience against something similar. So
yeah, it's true. It's very true.
We'll see.
So he's not
this
going
might be
into
the last time.
He knows what he's getting into, I guess.
Definitely.
Indeed.
Yeah, he's not unprepared. Well, I fear the time has come.
Oh no.
So our next fight is going to be the YouTube exclusive. Now we are.
Oh boy.
Earmuffs if you can't stay.
So
That's fine.
Skip this point. Can we have like a skip marker for the next fight?
No, we've got to dive in. So for context, we've all seen the fight because we're all supporters. Yeah. We've seen the fight. It's a Saturday. This fight, there is a lot to talk about, and not just because you're here, Matt, because there is just so much going on in this fight. So
it is a weird situation.
Before we even begin the fight, let's talk about one, the setup, and two, kind of your preparation for Cobalt.
So like I said in the very beginning of this podcast, all of our vertical spinner fights, which we typically don't do fantastic in, have been the spinner was a non-factor, and we were not able to stay underneath them and take hits. So that was the three things that I took into consideration. So I figured no spinner for this fight. Cobalt is, what Cobalt's made out of and how thick just all of it is. The spinner is not going to be a deciding factor for sure in this match. So that was an easy decision. Don't run the spinner in this fight. And just armor up and make our ground game as good as it can get. So, we had super thick steel front armor. We had, a ton of weight in forks and wedgelets on the front that, there's the same forks and wedgelets we used against Scorpios. We just took the top armor weight and put it in front armor. So, going into this fight, if you watch the fight, our ground game worked really well in the beginning of the fight. Like, we kind of scooped under him without a problem. We lifted him. And I knew this was one of those fights where if we're not in control the whole entire fight, Cobalt just has to hit you once. And no matter who you are, if you are hit once by Cobalt, that spells huge trouble. So, the fight was going pretty well in my opinion. It was really short, so you can't, if it went long, who's to say what would have happened? But we got, I think, 3 lifts on them. And then that third lift, so I'm pushing him towards the shelf. I'm like, okay, we have a perfect shot at the shelf. I'm going to try to lift him onto it. So I lift him kind of almost onto it, but he kind of, fell off of our lifter. And then the railing on the shelf is not the same as the rest of the arena. It is a little bit higher, which people were not totally aware of. So what that means is when you jam a fork into it, it is not going to hit it. It is going to jam underneath it. Which you don't know. If you're talking a 1/4 inch difference in height, which you can't see from the driver's area.
Even though on camera you can't really see from there. It's to the naked eye it doesn't look any different, but there is a small difference.
Yeah, so it's definitely different than the rest of the railing, because we've had the forks we fought against Black Dragon last season were shaped almost identical to these forks. These ones are just a little bit longer. So we rammed him into the wall several times, didn't really have problems with that. So I think it's a little bit different by the shelf, which was evident as we did get stuck. And as we are stuck there, Cobalt does. So then Cobalt has the decision. Do I leave them or do I hit them and free them? And if you're Cobalt, that decision is easy, because that if Cobalt is stuck and we have that position,
you leave him alone.
It's not in our best interest, because we know it's not a knockout shot. We flip them over, but they're free and they could come back and keep fighting. In our case, they know that if they go for that shot, it will hurt us. There's no going around it. So Cobalt took the shot behind us before we can get free. So at that point, we flip through the air, we land. I forget which side of drive. I think our left side of drive.
Yeah.
Our left side of drive was hurting. I think what happened is they went through the back plate of the robot, and the left drive motor was kind of crooked, which jammed up the chains a little bit. So I don't think it was completely dead, but it was close to it. We would have been borderline crab walking at that point in the fight. So then after that, Cobalt kind of pushes us into the corner, doesn't quite hit us. Cobalt is stuck on something on the floor.
Yes.
Cobalt, I'm pretty sure it was debris.
They seem to think it was a piece of floor that kind of got mangled and didn't get replaced until after this. I can't remember. I think I want to say I saw John comment somewhere on the internet. Go on.
It could have been the floor, could have been debris. I'm honestly not 100% sure.
The irony that Cobalt getting stuck on the floor again, right?
It's never happened before.
Yes. This is not new territory for them.
No, it's
Ghost of Duck returns again.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I tend to think it was debris, just considering the floor is like half-inch thick steel and it doesn't really curl up anymore like it once did. And there was definitely debris from our robot after that hit.
It just says a W next to it. That's how it worked out. It's maybe a bit of whiplash, but we'll gloss over that.
Yeah, exactly. But so at that point, Cobalt is kind of stuck. I noticed they are not moving. Something has happened. I don't know what's happened at that point. And we are in the short corner, and I am on the diagonal driver side, which means I have zero view of my robot. I can't see it at all. So all I know is that the robot is facing in my direction, and that I am in the corner. And I don't really know half my drive is messed up yet, because we didn't drive in that corner. Cobalt pushed us in that corner. So I don't really know the state of our drive. So not being able to see the robot, I drive forward, thinking that I will come out of the short corner. The robot veers left instead, because you cannot see the robot. And in veering left, same problem. It wasn't even a fork. It was one of the wedgelets, which is not something you would think would get stuck underneath the wall or stuck on the wall. So then we're hung up on the wall again. Just me not being able to see where I'm going necessarily and not knowing how the robot will drive. So at that point, we are both stuck. So in the fight was only about, I haven't seen the YouTube.
It was like 20 or 30 seconds, right? I think.
Yeah,
it was short.
It was like
really
20 or 30 seconds. In most scenarios, this fight. Well, okay, let me take it back a little bit. One other thing. So on the show, they kind of made it seem that Cobalt's weapon was stuck spinning, couldn't, like a Gigabyte or a Shredder situation. That was not the case. That is not true at all. What actually happened is part of either one of their switches came loose or debris from our robot got jammed in it, where they could not access the switch to turn off the weapon of the robot. The weapon was not stuck spinning. The weapon it came to a full stop. No one's going to go in the arena unless it just stops spinning. I mean, that's
suicide, literally. Like, you're going to lose an arm or something.
Yeah, not even Trey's going to do that.
Yeah.
No, he's not that crazy.
Yeah. So that's the weapon had stopped spinning. They could not access the switch for the weapon. So I'm talking to the Cobalt team. What they said is the switch for the weapon doesn't necessarily power the weapon. It powers the electronics for the weapon. Yeah. And then they have a separate switch that does, the actual power going to the motors of the robot.
I've read about this as well, because a Cobalt team member said on the Discord saying that actually their drive one as well would also affect their weapon. So if they'd turned that one off as well, both systems would have. And apparently they did know about this. This was actually made aware to production, and they even said this: if you turn one off, it'll shut both down. Allegedly.
Yeah. So I don't know exactly what happened on their side when they were talking to the refs and stuff. But what I hear is they tried to tell them that, and they didn't really buy it necessarily, or they didn't really trust that. They saw an LED on the robot, and to them, that means the robot's on. They don't really care what you say.
Yeah, of course.
So technically, how the rules work: if you are stuck in the first half of the fight, the first 90 seconds, they evaluate if they want to do an unstick. If you are stuck on debris, you're kind of out of luck. They will not do an unstick for that. So then it came to the point where they evaluate: do we want to go in the arena and unstick Whiplash? So, Trey is the person who goes in and unsticks the robots. And in the rules, this is in the rules that if it's the first half, they will evaluate. And if the situation seems unsafe, they will not unstick, and they will just let it go to the judges. Trey did not feel comfortable going next to Cobalt, whether it was on or off, the weapon was spinning or not spinning. That was, from his words, he heard a noise coming from the robot, which I don't know what that could have been. Could have been anything. Could have been fans. Could have been cooling fans. Could have been something. But
it's literally it's that ghost of Duck again. You know,
it was a quack. I heard a quack next.
Yeah, it's still hanging around.
Yeah. So Trey did not feel comfortable unsticking the robot. He did not want to go in there and do it. So basically, he made the decision. We're just going to go to the judges. So that was unfortunate that it kind of just went that way, where it was just kind of deemed just unsafe enough to not do the unstick. Because I mean, in reality, had they allowed for the unstick, we would have been given the chance to move
away.
And if we could move for 10 seconds, we would have been given the win. I mean, which is
that's the bit that hurts so much with this.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things, like, going back, I really don't know what could have been done differently on our part, because like when we're in that corner, one, we can't see the robot. Two, I don't know which part of the robot is damaged. So I don't know how I just assume go straight and then I'm out of the corner. So so that was decided. Then it goes to the judges. As far as the judges' decision, I thought it was a fair decision. Like on the scorecards itself. I mean, they did.
Were you surprised it was split?
Yeah, it was. I was kind of surprised it was split. Like I didn't really have any delusions that we were going to win that judge's decision. But I honestly didn't remember it being split. When we saw it on TV, I was just like, "What the heck?" Like, okay, that was closer than I thought, I guess.
What is this Twilight Zone I'm living in?
So yeah, it sucks to lose on a technicality like that, that's never fun. It's not something,
especially this far in the competition. Like fight night, you can get away with, but not here.
Yeah. And like the other thing that kind of sucks is like strategically, all of our fights were pretty damn sound. Like we were debatably, even the Cobalt fight, like we were on top until we got stuck. And I think it would have remained that way. I mean, just going head to head, if I was to drive somewhat decently, I don't think they would have gotten under us, unless they had a situation that ended up happening where we couldn't move and they got that one perfect shot behind us. So it does suck to lose in a season where nothing was necessarily wrong with your strategy, and the robot worked fine, and you seem to be on top for all of your fights. So that does suck, but maybe this is our version of the runner-up curse.
I was going to say, it was all looking so good, and then you were going to break it, and maybe this was just one more little, rearing of that. For me, and I know it's the same for a lot of people, because I think the way that this has been handled by the show itself, and kind of the way that it's been put together, it's really, really poor.
Yeah, I can agree.
Because
treats the audience like they have no idea what they're watching.
That's what I mean. Like I mean, I messaged you, Matt, after I saw the fight, and I kind of said like it's almost like shameful how poor it was, because
the overdubbing of that commentary in particular feels.
Yeah, no, it was. All we're asking for is a little transparency, just a little.
Yeah,
yeah.
I know it's a show first, competition second. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Keep talking. Yeah.
No. That's the thing. It's just like this is reality TV. We're
going back to what Adam talked about, isn't it? A couple of weeks back.
Yeah. Yes. It's a tricky balance. I mean, what can you do? I mean, unfortunately, Matt, you've had 2 of your fights highlighted, a runner-up from last year.
I mean, we'll get
and
to that
the missing third fight as well.
We'll get to that in a second.
I know.
I think. I mean, as far as like safety, Trey not wanting to put himself in danger.
That's fine. I get
nothing.
Yeah, that's understandable. It's just let us know that. We would have loved to see that.
Yeah, it was frustrating at the time, but like according to the rules, there was nothing wrong with what happened. He can decide whether he thinks, no matter what the situation is, he can go, I don't like how that looks, I don't want to do that, and then take it to the judges. Like that's his decision. So as far as the rules, it was fair. As far as the judging, it was fair. I thought the decision was fair. But the one thing that did suck was like how it was portrayed in the actual episode, which was kind of pretty dishonest in my opinion.
I was going to say it's basically just lying to your audience, which we've kind of discussed a lot this week, and it's frustrating because of course this fight, it didn't happen. I'm sure the Cobalt team didn't want the fight to end like this. I'm sure they'd have loved to go, like been freed and just you two carry on, because
Yeah.
In my, I'm going to say this. I think if the fact that they are still driving 100% and you were kind of struggling, I feel like Cobalt would have just done more damage, and I think it would have ended up going to Cobalt anyway eventually. But the thing is,
I mean, that also comes back to the thing though, if they were stuck on the floor or if they were stuck on debris, because if they were stuck on the floor, that allows for an unstick. If they're stuck on debris,
it doesn't.
You're out of luck.
Yeah, it's one of those things.
So we never really got to know because it never got to that point.
I feel like you guys earned the opportunity to try and win the fights. Or not lose the fighting. Do you know what I mean? Like there was enough there to kind of be like, okay, it's very, very frustrating. And I think the fact that BattleBots didn't really kind of address the fact that, hey, it wasn't actually stuck on, it was just like we felt unsafe to enter the arena. If they'd have just said we feel unsafe to enter the arena while it's there, no one would have cared. No one would have cared.
What's wrong with that?
Yeah. Just be honest. Come on now.
It feels like they highlighted this fight, to try and cover it up, almost. That's what it feels like.
I mean, when you look at the fights that happen in the episode, I mean, we discussed the Blip versus Jackpot fight. I feel like that was less incident-filled than this, and it's frustrating. And this is this has got good TV drama. Like you could have said, it's not safe to go in. We've got to go, just go straight to a decision. It would have made good TV, but the fact that they chose not to do so is mind-boggling to me. And
it's I mean, I feel like that's the thing that bothers us most, that it was like decided to just kind of be swept under the rug and really not. I mean, even like the commentary of the fight itself, like it
was post-production, clearly.
It was definitely post-production, but like even how they portrayed it, that like Cobalt was on top the whole entire time,
which it wasn't. If you've seen the fight now, you
look at those clips and it's being lifted up as it's saying Cobalt is dominating the fight.
So I mean, but then again, it comes to the whole thing where this has nothing to do with like the teams. Like the Cobalt team they did nothing wrong. Like people shouldn't be mad at them. Or if say the decision they decided to unstick us and not unstick Cobalt, people would probably be like, what the heck? Like, why is Whiplash getting this treatment?
Of course. It's because you've got a hex bug, that's why, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
It's revenge for you not having the spinner. That's what it was.
So we're at the mercy of what production wants to do. Whether it benefits us or another team, or, makes it look like they have something against us, it's their decision what they do. We have no control over that. Like, say they did unstick us and people are going like, oh, Whiplash is getting, preferential treatment. That's not our fault. That's what they decided to do. And we can't say like, no, I don't win this fight. Like, that's not how it works.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
no, of course not.
I mean, for me as well, like, the fact is, for me, like they could have just addressed it quite quickly and just said, look, we don't feel safe to go in. We're going to go to a judge's decision. They could have just done a little bit to camera. No one would have cared. And everyone would have been like, okay, that's fine. I get it. Because these robots could kill you.
They could point to the rules and show that. Yeah. Like, just like how a lot of the, relatively controversial judges' decisions, they point to the scorecards on social media, say like, argue with this because you can't argue with this. Like, look at these scores for these categories. It's pretty straightforward. So, maybe if they'd taken that approach with this and said in the rules, it says this is what happens when the situation seems unsafe, then that would have been a lot better. But that's just didn't fit in. So,
yeah. And before we kind of wrap up this a little bit, I just want to say, comment section, be polite, be nice, but I would love to see your thoughts, because ultimately there's no winner in this situation. Ultimately, for me, obviously Whiplash actually lost, which is one thing. Cobalt then looks fortunate and therefore doesn't get to kind of get the recognition. I mean, they finished they're in the top 8 now. Like, come on, that's an amazing achievement. So, but on their own, and ultimately, BattleBots loses because everyone's pissed off, and the fans lose because we didn't get to see a good fight. It's just a really unfortunate situation. But with that said, I would love to know what people think about this.
Distracts from the entire episode.
Literally. And it wasn't even in the episode, right? It's crazy.
That's the painful bit of this.
Yeah. I think... go on.
Yeah.
No, it's gone.
If I were to say the controversy is over, at this point, I would be lying. There's more to come.
Oh, God. We're not safe. We're still not safe.
It was going to get... I don't know what they will show and what they won't show, but it will be interesting to see.
God, that's ominous. Isn't
Will
it
it
really?
be swept under the shelf? This is the important thing.
Under the shelf.
Oh dear me!
I
I think the only alternative really in this fight, what they could have done, is go full Shredderator and Gigabyte and let Cobalt run out of battery, and then see if Whiplash can be moved afterwards. That's the only alternative, really.
Well, that's the thing though.
So
Cobalt
expensive to run.
So it's had that actually been the situation, that's the whole of the story. But it's to the discretion of Trey.
It's
really
expensive to film in that box.
Yeah. It's such a shame, but again, I'm intrigued to see what people think. But we'll move on, I think, because
but I think the biggest thing to take away from this is from this controversy and any future controversies, everything that happens is BattleBots' decision. A team can't no team is bribing them to give them preferential treatment. They look at a situation and go, "This is what I think what should happen." Sometimes it's wrong, but that's just how it works. It's not the team's fault. And I'm not like, sometimes they make the right decisions. I think this decision was right. In the past, maybe there have been, sketchy decisions, but it's just how it works. Sometimes you get the short end of the stick, and that's how it goes. And you can't bash teams for it. You can't. Yeah. It's no one's fault.
Sometimes it do be like that.
Yeah.
The wise words.
Thank you. I've been working on that one all day. The final fight of the episode was an absolute banger.
Incredible.
Oh my god.
A classic.
Best masterclass from this.
It was okay.
This was my favorite fight of the episode.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Favorite fight of the season for me.
Again, one of them as well. It was just the driving of Daniel Freitas in this. I mean, was just unbelievable. It was that kind of gyro into the short corner, land it and turn it and back out. That was the one where I was like, oh my god.
That was
when he's upside down as well.
Yes.
I know.
Yeah.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Both teams giving it absolutely everything. I've not seen endgame damage like this probably since the last time they fought Minotaur, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's just like the shock factor of this fight where endgame, the last time they fought, that was not the same endgame the first time they fought Minotaur. That endgame had not a very good record. It dealt a ton of damage, but didn't win very many fights. This endgame, on the other hand, has the damaging and the reliability of a champion robot. They were the champion. So they are known for their long forks. No one can get underneath them. When they have those on and they're fighting another vertical spinner, they are pretty untouchable. And just seeing Minotaur just go I don't care. This has no effect on
them. Is what happened.
Ate all of them instantly. It was I feel just the shock of that was just wow. This is something to behold.
I would love to know what the reaction was in the pits at this point, because I'm sure you'd have been seeing something, but what was your
reaction in the pits was insane. It was ridiculous. It was the loudest I have heard the pits get ever. It was insane. Yeah.
Wow. I do want to address something as well before we kind of the kind of the celebrations after the fight, and I've seen a few people, and I wasn't entirely happy.
A little over the top. It's all right.
But when the adrenaline's going, and you've just done that to the champions, and after the year that poor Daniel had as well, I can give him a pass.
Yes. He lives on emotion. Let's face it. We know it.
Yeah.
And that is, it's especially being Daniel Freitas. That's just how he's wired.
That's just him. That is just him.
Yeah. And how sometimes he goes over the top. Sometimes they go over the top. Yeah. But it's just, and there's even been situations at other tournaments where they've gone a little over the top and it's caused issues. But it's just how they are. It's they're that's RoboCast. I don't know what to say.
It reminded me of a classic episode of Top Gear where Richard Hammond beats someone and he just walks up to the driver.
The UK v Germany,
the bad winner, and he goes "Yes!" right in front of the driver's face. It was great. But obviously he did shake their hands afterwards and kind of apologise, I think, because it was when the adrenaline's going, you do some crazy things, and credit to him. He kind of, I think the end game team took it in good spirits.
they were very good sports. They're very good sports about everything. Even when they were the champion, they were just very kind of humble about it, and honestly, I liked how they came back from being the champion and they had kind of new, like more clean cut look this season.
Yeah,
and,
with
like,
the suits.
yeah.
Very
I
good.
think they handled victory very well and handled defeat very well. So that's something to be said about that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It does mean that Minotaur.
Very mature team.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this isn't the first time the 16th seed's taken out the first.
No,
well.
it isn't. If we look back to 2018 when Bombshell beat Tombstone, that was a classic as well.
Yeah. Forgot about that.
Good times. Good times.
Yeah, we get to watch that in the UK soon, remember?
We do. Is it this week?
Yeah.
Next week?
It is Monday. Yeah, Monday.
Excellent.
It's on.
Can't wait for that. That's going to be great.
Yeah.
It
Maddie,
does mean...
you talk about forks. You talk about forks. There's a moment in this fight where you think the match is over with Endgame getting stuck down the kill saw slot and upended.
He got two of them
clean.
in.
Yes.
Well, here's an interesting thing this fight demonstrates. Like, it sort of really demonstrates the rock, paper, scissors of BattleBots. And we're like, honestly, Minotaur and maybe Copperhead, probably the only two robots that would have taken out Endgame. Like, if I'm being totally honest, I don't think anyone else could have done that. So, but back to what I was saying, like the rock, paper, scissors of it, you have SawBlaze, who annihilates Minotaur in an amazing fight. Then you have Endgame, who absolutely just owns SawBlaze. And then Minotaur completely owns Endgame. You have three championship-worthy robots. Like, it's top tier gets. And just depending on where they line up with each other, you have a totally different outcome. Mm-hmm. So it's I don't know, it's really interesting looking at that.
Definitely. Nice little trifecta at the top, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Minotaur through to the round of 8.
Yeah. Fight Witch Doctor.
Well, yeah, another rematch. They fought
from 2018 again, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't the
same
same
Witch
Doctor,
longer these
of
teams
course.
stick around, the more they're going to fight each other.
Yeah.
Yep.
It is interesting because, Minotaur normally doesn't like Vert. I mean, the last few times, they fought, obviously, yourself, Matt, obviously, they had a lot of issues in that fight.
Yeah.
But, they lost to Death Roll and kind of got chewed up a bit. They lost to Bite Force, Bombshell, of course.
Yeah.
Another Vert where they lost in the tournament too. It is intriguing to see how they're going to deal with Witch Doctor now, because obviously they fought before, but it was the season where Witch Doctor was really wasn't doing well, was it? Yeah. Whereas nowadays, you fight Witch Doctor and you just know they're going to give you a good pasting. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, since then it's a completely new Minotaur and completely new Witch Doctor.
Exactly.
So it's just like you couldn't compare this Minotaur Endgame fight to the previous prior fight. It's the same thing. It's a totally new fight. Yeah.
It is interesting. So I'm going to ask David and Steve now, because David, your prediction to win the season was Whiplash.
Yeah, it was going so well.
And I'm going to ask Steve as well, because obviously Steve, we didn't really get to speak to you very much last week, but your pick to win was Gigabyte, and you're very mad at Steve's Reasonable now, aren't you?
They break everything. Who's
going to win now? We've got 8 left.
Cobalt.
Really?
All the way.
Really?
Yeah. I really think so.
I'm going to
challenge. I wouldn't mind if it happened.
I'm going to go Tantrum.
They got to get the triple crown, man.
Tantrum.
Oh yeah, Cobalt.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, Matt, you can't say. Who did you think was going to win at this point? Who, like, when you saw the last 8, you're like, ooh, who's got the kind of nice path through?
Who did I think was going to win? I thought at this point, I was looking at Hydra and saying that they were pretty damn solid. Like, because they had all of their problems. They've already had so many problems in the tournament and still somehow are where they are.
Yeah.
So, like,
found a way.
A Hydra that doesn't have those problems at this point with this experience is like pretty damn hard to beat. Like, that's where my mind was at. It's not going to, I mean, for any of these robots that are still in it, it's like, even you look at the top 16, any of those robots has the potential to win. Like, you wouldn't be surprised to see any of those in the final.
Definitely.
And even more now in the top 8.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we were talking about that with Pete when we had him on. It's like all these robots have the capability of winning the whole thing. It just takes the right series of events to happen. They're all capable. Where back in years past, you think like, oh, there's really only like maybe three or four really tough contenders. For each time we're here, it's
the competition.
It's the whole field.
Tough. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. For my money, I've gone back and forward about it a lot, and I think it's going to be JMO's. Yeah. I think it's SawBlaze, but we'll see. There's a lot to go now.
Well, SawBlaze is interesting because like he's one of those robots where when he is winning a fight, he is winning, and you are not coming back from it.
Exactly.
But it is also one of those robots where if he starts on his back foot and is losing, he is not often he comes back from that.
No,
so like he's going to have to be perfect, which to be fair, he's done a pretty great job of that so far.
Yeah, exactly. That's apart from you made one mistake, so we'll have to see if he makes any more. I think the last thing I do want to kind of chat about a little bit, Matt. Obviously, we mentioned it briefly. You did only have 2 televised fights this year, which is the other thing I'm kind of irritated at BattleBots for, because ultimately you were the runner-up from last year. You've been a stalwart since the show was at least on Discovery. Obviously I know you were around with Splatter as well, but didn't really get any look in with Splatter. It frustrates me knowing that. Well, one, there's the 2 fights in the regular season. I know that it's been talked about a lot, and we've spoken to 3 teams now since the bracket started that have had 2 fights, which I find quite strange. And obviously having the 2 fights put on YouTube as well. Like, I'm curious, like, would that affect your sponsorship kind of thing as well? Because normally, I don't want to ask too much because it's a financial thing, and I don't really like asking that kind of thing. But like, for me, I'm curious as well. Like, what's the, because normally you're a top 8, top 4, top 2, whatever. You get a lot of fights in the season.
Yeah.
Would that, like, does this affect you? Like, knowing that you potentially get less screen time?
Yeah, no, you do get less screen time. So it's not a good thing for sponsorship for sure.
Yeah.
Like, sponsors will, I mean, you have to explain like why we are not on this episode. Like that's really what it comes down to. It's not good for sponsorship for sure. It's definitely it is not good in that sense. But then again, like our Ice Wave fight, for example, like I kind of get why they cut it. We flipped him over pretty quick. It wasn't all that.
You tried to make a fight out. I think you let him hit you a couple times.
Yeah, they hit us. They kind of had us on the ropes for a second where
you eventually got stuck under, right?
There was one,
and that was because their bar actually hit the wedgelet, which was a really weird thing to happen. At one point, they got under us, and it fed one of our wedgelets into their bar, and the wedgelet was like exploded. Like it was just kind of hanging on there. So it had so much damage, it just kind of folded underneath. But luckily, that wasn't a huge problem. But yeah, I mean, I get why that one wasn't aired. Like we flipped him over really quick. There wasn't a whole lot of damage. And the Cobalt fight, I mean, you could you could think for yourself why it wasn't aired.
We'll let the conspiracy theorist delve into that one.
We need the tinfoil again, but I think we've covered it enough tonight.
Yeah. People can have their fun with that. There were some pretty I saw like one theory saying that like someone thought that like Cobalt like wouldn't be ready for their next fight and like we would take their place, and like I've seen all sorts of weird theories about what's going to happen or why things happen.
Look, we know what happens. Mammoth takes that spot anyway.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
Sorry,
you guys take it on you
again. Yep. I think one last thing as well. I know you hinted to it slightly in your Facebook post. Are we going to see a yellow boy in Bounty Hunters this year?
It's possible. Bounty Hunters. I don't even know when bounties are going to air. To be honest,
no one said yet.
No one said yet. No. So it'll be. I'm assuming it'll hopefully not too long off, but we could be in there. Yeah. I'll tell you one thing. We were asked if we wanted to be in there.
Okay.
I can tell you that.
Okay.
And
if you had the choice of which bounty you'd go for, even then, who would you have liked to have had? Obviously, given that we had, I think so. You had Lockjaw, Rotator, Scorpius, Tombstone, Witch Doctor, and Gigabyte. I think were the kind of 6 who won last year.
Yeah.
Of those, because I think they've been confirmed as the bounty bosses at this point. And if they haven't, they're the bounty bosses.
Breaking news. Sorry, Jeff.
That's
yeah. Who would you have liked to have chosen of the 6?
Well, that's a good question, because that depends like what we want out of our bounty experience. Do we want a sure shot at winning the bounties? Because I feel like a lot of those robots we have fought and beaten, or we know we have a pretty good shot at beating. But there are the couple in there, like I would say specifically Lockjaw and Witch Doctor, which we know we would struggle with and would be really close and would be a really good challenge and would give us good experience. So
surely Tombstone must be up there, right? Because you fought Tombstone twice and lost.
Rematch.
Yeah, that's true. But one thing I will say at this point, because we were the round of 16, because like before that, people sign up for what bounty they want to be in. When you're at that point, they kind of just choose for you if you choose you want to be in, because they just need to fill spots. And like in relation to the tournament, the bounties are happening very soon. So they just kind of put you somewhere. They say, do you want to be in one? And you go, okay. And they throw you in one. So at this point, it necessarily wasn't up to us if we had wanted to be in a bounty where we would end up. But I will leave it at that. The bounties will happen. And I will say, in my opinion, some of the best fights of the season happen in bounty hunters.
I've heard some.
There were some insane moments in bounty hunters that like robots that like certain robots that maybe had tough luck in the tournament or just had stupid things happen, go into bounty hunters and just like
clean house.
It's insane. There are some crazy moments in there. I will say that.
It's exciting. Well, it does pay me a little bit to say that you're not going to be in the final episode this year. I think
for the first time.
First time, I know, which is crazy to think about. But as ever, thank you for coming in and talking to us. You're always welcome to come and talk robots with us, and we love having you on. It's
anytime.
Yeah,
no, and anytime you want me on, I'll be there.
Absolutely.
Fun podcast.
Of course, David as well. Thank you very much for your time. It's nice to have you on and a bit of Norfolk representation.
Indeed. It's not quite Norwalk, but it's close enough.
Well, there is potentially an event called Norfolk Havoc coming soon, which I'm excited for.
Rumour has it.
What is it called?
So there's an area of England called Norfolk. Norfolk. So it's Norfolk. Okay. Norfolk Havoc is the working title. I think
unconfirmed. Okay. We'll let Jevon cover that one and
he can
drop him.
Not an April Fool's joke, promise.
Yeah. It's totally not an April Fool's joke.
It's not.
This is maybe
if I make some money at Norwalk and replenish my my travel funds,
come and say hi. Come and say hi, please. It would be amazing. I mean, the best thing. Right. I feel like we need to catch up the amount of times you kind of come and spoke to us.
We'll just kidnap you for Robo now. Don't be fine.
With that said, I have been Sam Elliott 64.
I have been Steve the American Killjoy.
I've been DavidOfSmeg.
I'm Vasquez from Whiplash.
And myself and Steve, maybe Jevon, maybe David again, we don't know because Dave.
We have a hard time coordinating these things.
Well, no, because Jevon's in the US next week. He's at Charlie's wedding, isn't he?
Basically, I'm just going to stay cool for the next week, and if I'm needed, I'll be here. We'll
see what happens. But thank you everyone for listening. Again, I know I mentioned already, but be nice in the comments. Be respectful to kind of everything that's gone on, because ultimately, it's not really anyone's fault. But it's an unfortunate circumstance.
If anything, if you're going to complain about anything, say this should be changed in the rules and give constructive criticism.
Exactly. Give a clear kind of criticism. Yes. You're right.
That is all I have to say.
Yeah, there you go. I think that's all of us want really. But
perfectly fair.
Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week for the final.